In the last video, we covered the first era of Dokkanfest units from STR Broly as well as first anniversary Gogeta. Today, we're picking up right where we left off and going over the period in which Dokkan started to explode in popularity, and an era many people remember fondly. Join me as we cover the second half of 2016, starting with the very first God Lead in Dokkan, and perhaps the most impactful unit in Dokkan history. Five months after the release of Super Gogeta, we finally got Super Vegito introduced into Dokkan. He introduced the biggest leader skill jump we had ever seen in the game, giving AGL types Key 3, attack, defense, and HP up by 70%. Prior to this, the best leader skills in the game either gave Key or a percentage-based boost to a single stat. AGL Super Vegito buffed all stats by a massive 70% and gave AGL types Key 3 on top of that. This completely killed Rainbow teams and earned units with this type of leader skill the title God Lead. Not only did Super Vegito have by far the best leader skill in the game, he was also the first summonable unit to have 7 links instead of 6. He boasted 2 of the 3 best key links in the game and also had an incredible Saiyan link set to boot. Furthermore, he also raised all allies' attack by 30% for one turn, including himself, in the super attack effect, making him hit slightly harder than just immense damage. And last but certainly not least, let's talk about Vegito's passive. He reduced damage received from normal attacks by 80%, making him completely invincible from normal attacks. Although he could still take big damage from enemy supers, the massive HP and defense increase from his leader skill, on top of the fact you could just run units that sealed enemy super attacks alongside Vegito, resulted in super attacks not being detrimental to Vegito at all. He also introduced a new type of ability into the game, counters. Every time Vegito was hit by a normal attack, he countered by hitting the enemy with a special attack. Upon reading Vegito's initial details, many people believed he was underwhelming and inferior to STR Gogeta, thinking he was just simply a tank unit with no offensive capabilities. But that was before people witnessed firsthand just how broken this new ability was.
And Vegito's gonna just block, and he's gonna take out the Goku. Bye, Gokusa! 196k on the counter. Jeez, this Vegito is so OP, man. That counter is just, that is the icing on the cake. That's what makes him probably the best card in this game.
Most of Super Vegito's damage came from his counter attacks, each of which did slightly less damage than his super attack. With just 3 counters in a turn, he was capable of out-damaging every unit in the game, and he was still in the discussion as the hardest hitting unit in the game months later due to this ludicrous potential counter damage. Vegito was so powerful that it was optimal to run rare units such as Ninja Murasaki and Oceanus Shenron, as they were the only AGL sealers at the time. He was easily the best unit in the game and completely warped the meta, almost on the same level as STR Gogeta on release. Speaking of which, Vegito's banner is among the best banners in the history of the game. Not only was the previous god of the game STR Gogeta on the banner, his banner also introduced the physical type god lead, Physical Broly. Broly was the first character to receive a second Dokkanfest exclusive card, and he was very strong, though not on the same level as Vegito. He was the first unit in the game that had the ability to launch an additional super attack, so even though he did supreme damage instead of immense, his ability to double super on top of the flat 7000 attack buff he got from his passive made him one of the hardest hitting units in the game. Unfortunately, his pitiful defensive stat made him a bit of a glass cannon. Mono Physical wasn't as powerful as Mono AGL due to the lack of any real physical tanks, but it was capable of dishing out quite a lot of damage. Both Vegito and Broly needed 77 medals to Dokkan Awaken, but thankfully their Dokkan events now drop 7 medals per clear instead of the usual 1 medal, though it now costs 50 stamina to take on their super difficult stage. Additionally, their Dokkan events were some of the most difficult stages to date. You needed units with the fierce battle link to bypass Vegito's monstrous damage reduction, and considering TURs were still quite rare for many players, it was borderline impossible for most people to complete Vegito's Dokkan event. TEQ Vegito and INT Vegito also Dokkan awakened from Super Vegito's Dokkan event, and they were slightly better now, with INT Vegito gaining more attack per key sphere obtained, and TEQ Vegito now raising allies' attack and defense by 30%. Broly's Dokkan event was equally challenging, possessing the previous Dokkanfest Broly's Rampage ability. Some players were able to brute force their way through Broly's ridiculously high defense with units that had the Blazing Battle Link, but most players were helpless before Broly's onslaught. However, people soon discovered that there was a summonable SR unit with the ability to single-handedly decimate physical Broly, SR Master of Magic Goldo. Goldo had the ability to reduce the enemy's defense to 0 for 3 turns when he was hit, which allowed players to obliterate Broly with their regular teams. This made Broly's Dokkan event a breeze, and SR Goldo was revered by the Dokkan community. 2 days prior to the release of Vegito and Broly, they actually released the first ever LR card into the game as a free-to-play unit, LR Super Saiyan Goku. This free LR could be farmed from the Transcended Warrior Prime Battle event, and you needed 777 medals to Dokkan Awaken Goku into an LR. His event dropped either 5, 7, 10, 15, or 20 medals, with 5 and 7 being by far the most common. This meant that you had to clear this 50 stamina event over 100 times just to acquire all 777 medals. Emphasis on clear. Most players had trouble beating this event once, let alone 100 times. You see, this event could only be attempted by Super Strike units, who for the most part were not great. Coupled with the fact that the boss Goku hit incredibly hard and could one-shot most of your units, resulted in many people not getting LR Goku for many months, with many people outright choosing not to even grind the medals for Goku. However, despite this free LR Goku being a pain in the ass to obtain, he was actually insanely good. He had the same leader skill as Gogeta, making him one of the most valuable leaders in the game. He was also capable of reaching level 150 and had the highest stats in the game as a result. LR units also had a 24 key meter and launched a Colossal Super at 12 key and an Ultra Super Attack at 18 key that did Mega Colossal damage. Both of these new super attack multipliers were stronger than immense damage, and Goku also gained a massive 10,000 attack from his passive, making him the hardest hitting unit in the game over STR Gogeta and AGL Vegeta with less than 3 counters. The final thing to note from the celebration is the 30th Dragon Ball Anime Anniversary Super Warrior Saga event. A new stage was added every day to this event so players could experience famous scenes from the Dragon Ball anime, from original Dragon Ball to the currently airing Goku Black arc. Alongside this event, they released 4 trophy cards, each representing iconic shots from the openings of Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, Dragon Ball GT, and Dragon Ball Super respectively. At the end of the month, they released the Universe 6 vs Universe 7 banner, which featured a new Super Saiyan Blue Goku, Vegeta, Piccolo, and Hit. Unfortunately, the first ever Hit card was quite underwhelming, only having some decent stunning capabilities. Piccolo 2 was awful, but Super Saiyan Blue Goku and Vegeta were nukers that gained 15% attack per physical and tech key spheres obtained respectively. They linked perfectly with their nuking leader counterparts and became the best nukers in the game, though nuking started to diminish drastically in popularity with the start of the God Lead meta. The Grim Reaper of Justice Gotenks released in the beginning of August as the Tech type God Lead. Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks was a unique card with 3 different super attacks depending on the amount of ki he had. At 10 ki he had an immense damage super attack, and at 11 ki he massively raised attack and did immense damage. At 12 ki he did extreme damage and greatly lowered defense. This meant that to maximize Gotenks' damage, you wanted to aim for 11 ki and avoid getting 12 ki at all costs. This was quite annoying as Gotenks had Over in a Flash, so in the middle slot linked with 2 other Over in a Flash units, Gotenks would automatically sit at 12 ki. However, if you were able to get 10 or 11 ki with Gotenks, he would become one of the hardest hitting units in the game, as he also gained 120% attack on Super, similar to physical full power Frieza. The STR Super Saiyan Gotenks, released alongside Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, was also pretty decent and could put out solid damage consistently. Gotenks' Dokkan event was quite annoying, as he was incredibly tanky and his weakness was Super Buu and Piccolo units, both of which had 0 good units at the time. Quite shockingly, the next Dokkan Fest released only 9 days after Gotenks, and people realized exactly which unit we were about to get from the Dokkan event teaser.
3倍4倍いや
AGL Super Saiyan Blue Kaioken Goku introduced a new type of leader skill into the game. HP, attack, and defense up by 100% to a certain type. Units with this type of leader skill were referred to as Demigod leads, as they give 30% more to all stats than God leads in exchange for no increase to ki. This type of leader skill was inferior to God leads, though it was quite popular to mix and match God lead and Demigod leads in exchange for slightly higher stats. Blue Goku himself was a beast of a unit. He had the best link set in the game, possessing shocking speed, prepared for battle, and over in a flash. He also hit like a truck, gaining an astonishing 20,000 attack and 10,000 defense for the first 10 turns of battle. This also counted turns where Goku himself wasn't present, so it's easier to think of it as Goku's first 5 appearances starting from his initial turn. Unfortunately, his name in-game was Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan Goku, and not Super Saiyan God Super Saiyan Kaioken Goku, meaning you couldn't link him with other Blue Gokus. The reason Dokkan did this is because alongside Dokkanfest Blue Goku, they Dokkan awakened the old AGL Resurrection of F Goku. This was perhaps the strongest Dokkan awakening of an old unit to date. Blue Goku gained prepared for battle upon becoming a TUR, and his passive increased from 80% to 100% when performing a super attack. He hit almost as hard as Dokkanfest Blue Goku, and Dokkan was probably scared of this rotation being too powerful if they were able to be linked together. The tech nuking lead Blue Goku also saw an awakening into a TUR, but he didn't change much and was still in a similar spot as before. AGL Super Vegito returned on Goku's banner, but hilariously, Super Vegito was replaced by Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta on Global, and they simply pasted Vegeta's art over Vegito in the celebration info. Needless to say, people were furious at Dokkan over this change. In the middle of August, we got a V-Jump leak that revealed the last 2 God leads, Buuhan, the INT God lead, and Omega Shenron, the STR God lead. For those that don't know, V-Jump is a monthly magazine in Japan that promotes video games that are released based on brands which exist or existed in Jump magazines such as Dragon Ball, Naruto, Yu-Gi-Oh, etc. Back in the first several years of Dokkan, we would get the reveals for the next Dokkan Fest and themes for major celebrations days in advance through V-Jump. This was one of the first times we got major information for Dokkan through V-Jump, the other time being a poll V-Jump held a few months prior for what old SSRs people wanted to see get a Dokkan awakening, which will be relevant in just a little bit. But before that, on August 18th, we got a double rates banner that came with the Dokkan awakening of INT Turles. Turles was crazy. He was now an all types Ki 3 leader and gave all allies 3 Ki and 20% attack from his passive. He was invaluable for World Tournament teams and would soon become a major asset on INT Buuhan's team. A week after Turles, we got a Dragon Ball Fusions banner that featured 7 SSRs from the Dragon Ball Fusions game. Pandel and Bullpan were decent support units, but the rest of the SSRs were nothing noteworthy and quite forgettable. At the beginning of September, we got Dokkanfest INT Buuhan, and he was right below Super Vegito as the second best unit in the game. Interestingly, Buuhan's super attack changed depending on his super attack level. From super attacks level 1 through 4, he would do immense damage, and at super attacks levels 5 through 9, he would do immense damage and lower attack and defense. And finally, at super attack level 10, he had a 30% chance to greatly raise attack even more and greatly lower attack and defense. Thankfully, you could farm Buuhan's super attack from the STR Buuhans that dropped from the first stage of Buuhan's Dokkan event. Speaking of which, Buuhan's Dokkan event was equally as annoying as Gotenks', as Buuhan was incredibly tanky and you needed units with the power bestowed by God Link to deal with his healing in later phases. Back to INT Buuhan, he gained 12% attack and recovered 3000 HP per key sphere obtained. He was capable of hitting as hard as every other top tier Dokkan Fest while also significantly healing your HP. Buuhan was perhaps the best villain unit we had seen to date, and he also had a decent link set possessing shocking speed, which he shared with INT Ultimate Gohan and INT Janemba. Fast forward to September 14th, we got another double race banner that featured characters that got random Dokkan awakenings here and there throughout the last few months. Remember that V-Jump poll that was held a few months ago? The winner of that poll was TEQ Super Saiyan 2 Goku, and he received a Dokkan awakening in the middle of August. The banner also featured TEQ Future Gohan, AGL Super Saiyan 2 Goku, and Physical Super Saiyan 2 Goku, all of whom received the Dokkan awakening just a week prior due to placing in the top 7 on that poll. These units only received the Supreme Damage Super, as only the winner was given an Immense Damage Super upon becoming a TUR. The next day, Dokkan dropped the second Demigod lead, TEQ Golden Frieza. He was an amazing tank, reducing damage received by 70%, and was able to hit decently hard as well with his 70% attack buff from his passive. He also greatly lowered defense on Super, which was a very valuable trait to have in this era of Dokkan. AGL Golden Frieza also Dokkan awakened, and he became the best tank in the game, now reducing damage received by 90%. They also released a new free-to-play LR that could be pulled from the updated Friend Summon banner, LR 17 and 18. This was the first unit in the game to feature two different characters in one card fighting together. 17 and 18 had a really good leader skill that raised all types ki by 4, and they shared the same strengths as LR Super Saiyan Goku. High stats, max level of 150, colossal damage 12 ki super, and mega colossal damage 18 ki super. Unlike LR Goku though, this unit actually had really good links such as shocking speed and fear and faith, making them a fantastic option on Vegito's team and villain-centric teams. Their grind was also held, as you needed medals from every single Dokkan event available in the game, including 77 medals each from the 5 most recent Dokkan events. A week later, we got the first Dragon Ball Heroes collab banner in Dokkan, which featured Adult Super Saiyan Gotenks, AGL Baby Janemba, INT Bobbity Kid Buu, and STR Super Pikkon. Gotenks was a great unit and was amazing on mono-tech teams. He raised attack by 50% on Super for 3 turns and gained 80% attack when ki was 12 or more. The other 3 SSRs were decent utility units for their respective mono-type teams, but weren't anything to write home about. At the end of the month, Omega Shenron finally descended onto Dokkan, and many people were excited. Not necessarily for Omega himself, but more so for the fact that STR Gogeta finally received his God Leader. Omega Shenron though was pretty good. He greatly lowered defense on Super and lowered all enemies' attack by 30% from his passive. He was a powerful utility unit that debuffed the enemy, allowing your units to tank better. The main downside of Omega was his link set. Mono STR included mainly units with Over and a Flash, and there were very few STR units that shared shocking speed with him. Omega was considered the weakest God Lead at the time, but he was still in the highest class of characters and considered one of the best units in the game. The banner unit SSRs released alongside Omega were all decent damage dealers, but the main prize was the aforementioned rare Oceanus Shenron, who debuted on Omega's banner and became a staple on mono AGL teams with her super attack ceiling effect. Just over a month after the release of the Dragon Ball Fusion's banner, Dokkan gave TURs to 3 of the previously released SSRs. Pandel and Bullpan became slightly better support units, and Karoli was now a decent damage dealer and a solid option on monotech teams. The last 3 units from the V-Jump poll also received Dokkan awakenings around this time. The Baba Shop Super Saiyan Goku was now a great option on mono AGL with his ki and attack support from his passive, while Super Saiyan 2 Vegeta and Super Saiyan Gohan disappointingly were barely better than their SSR versions. On October 20th, the physical Demigod leader was released in the form of Goku Black. The Goku Black arc was still currently airing at this time, and many people were ecstatic to summon for the first ever Goku Black unit in the game. Unfortunately, he wasn't as powerful as players were hoping for. It was a watered down version of INT Buuhan, having the same super attack level gimmick as Buuhan, while also being an inferior nuker. His only real value was his above average damage, and the player base was quite underwhelmed by physical Goku Black. Realizing this, Dokkan actually buffed Goku Black when he came out on Global. He had higher attack and HP stats than his JP counterpart, and he also raised Extreme Class Allies Ki by 3, transforming him from a mediocre release to an amazing one only on Global. Moving on to the end of October, Dokkan was celebrating hitting 100 million global downloads. They released a special ticket banner that featured every single Dokkanfest ever released up until STR Omega Shenron. They gave all players one ticket for every 50 stones they had ever spent from the beginning of the game up until October 18th, 2016. Dokkan also released the 15th World Tournament, which massively reworked the rewards and point system for World Tournament, as well as adding a local ranking in which players could earn a new Piccolo that would eventually become an LR months later. To celebrate the 35th anniversary of the Dr. Slump anime, they released a special Arale crossover banner that featured 7 new SSRs. Physical Arale had a good all types Ki 3 leader skill, and AGL Arale was capable of stunning the enemy on Super. STR Arale was actually a pretty good attack all unit for World Tournament, and Obacha Man, Sour Man, and Mercenary Tao were quite forgettable. General Blue on the other hand was one of the best stunners in the game, having a 70% chance to stun on Super. About a week later, they also Dokkan awakened the Family Kamehameha SSRs, and they were all just slightly better than their SSR versions. However, players at the time, as well as every Dragon Ball fan around the world, had their attention placed elsewhere. Episode 65 of Dragon Ball Super just finished airing a few days prior, and at the end of the episode, it showed a preview of next week's episode. Dragon Ball fans were losing their minds over the return of Vegito, now donning the Super Saiyan Blue transformation, and his fight in episode 66 a week later blew everyone away. However, Dokkan players had no idea that what they just witnessed would immediately be recreated in-game.
お前らのセンスに合わせて名付けるとしたらスーパーサイヤ人ロゼ。どうした？てめえの力はこれっぽっちか？
The second ever Dual Dokkan Fest featured AGL Super Saiyan Rosé Goku Black and Physical Vegito Blue, who released just a few days after episode 66 aired. They introduced a new type of leader skill into the game. Super Class and Extreme Class Ki 3, HP, attack, and defense up by 50%. You can tell that they learned their lesson from Gogeta, as instead of giving one of them an all-types lead, they decided to split it into Super and Extreme Class, as well as lower the stat increase as to not invalidate the previous leader skills in the game. Despite this, they were still supremely good leaders, and the amount of variety they allowed in team building allowed Super and Extreme Class teams to rival monotype teams, if not be outright better than them. Everybody expected Vegito Blue to break the game, but he fell just shy of everyone's expectations. That doesn't mean he wasn't amazing though. He launched a guaranteed additional attack that had a 10% chance of becoming a super attack, and a 70% chance of launching another additional attack that had a 10% chance of becoming a super. This meant that with good luck, Vegito Blue could launch up to 3 super attacks in a turn. And that wasn't all. Vegito Blue also countered normal attacks with tremendous power, just like Super Vegito. He had by far the highest offensive potential out of any unit in the game, not counting nuking. However, the main thing that differentiated Vegito Blue from Super Vegito, and easily his biggest flaw, was the fact that he only reduced damage received from normal attacks by 30% instead of 80% like Super Vegito. This meant that he was an unreliable tank, and you had to be way more cautious with him than Super Vegito. He was still undeniably a top 5 unit in the game and a must summon for players. However, he often sat towards the bottom of many people's top 5s, and that's because Vegito's counterpart was widely considered to be the better of the two. Super Saiyan Rosé Goku Black was a very simple unit in comparison to Vegito Blue. He gained 100% attack from his passive and gave extreme class allies 3 ki. Seem familiar? That's right, when physical Goku Black was buffed on Global few months after his initial release on JP, they simply gave him part of Rosé Goku Black's passive, and that single ability made him into an amazing card. Extreme class units don't share as many ki links with each other as Saiyan units, so Rosé's ability to give 3 ki to villains allowed units in his team to perform super attacks consistently. He was exactly what villains needed and was the perfect leader for the team, making every villain that was run with him more effective. Furthermore, Rosé's team had more units with versatile abilities than Vegito Blue's team, which made his team better in many people's eyes. They had great debuffers, healers, supports, tanks, and damage dealers, whereas super teams really only had the latter two. Vegito Blue could carry the whole team with some good luck, while Goku Black lifted the whole team up and made everyone else better. He was considered the second best unit in the game, with Super Vegito still being considered number 1 due to being the closest thing in the game to a perfect unit. And his position was further solidified with the release of the Hidden Potential system at the end of the month, which allowed units to gain more stats and the ability to crit, dodge, and launch additional attacks. Units with percentage-based buffs in their passives saw a higher increase in their overall numbers than units with flat attack and defense buffs. And units that countered and launched additional attacks were also massively buffed by the ability to crit and perform more attacks. However, due to the scarcity of potential orbs back then, it took some time for players to strengthen their units and see the full benefits of the Hidden Potential system. Let's also not forget the fact that back then, you had to activate each node one at a time, so it took 30 business days just to unlock all the nodes for a unit. After Rosé and Vegito, at the beginning of December we got Dokkanfest Cell, who was the STR Demigod leader. He was the second character to have 2 Dokkan Festival cards, and he was the first unit in the game to stack defense on Super. Just like Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, Cell had 2 types of super attacks depending on how much ki he had. At 10 ki and 12 ki, he caused immense damage and stacked attack and defense by 20%. At 11 ki, he did supreme damage to all enemies and stacked attack and defense by 20%. It was a viable option for World Tournament, but due to needing 11 ki to get his AoE super off, people opted to just stick with Broly or Arale. He hit pretty hard with his 100% attack buff from his passive, and he worked really well with Omega Shenron. The OG STR Super Saiyan 2 Gohan also received the Dokkan Awakening from Cell's medals, and he received an immense damage super attack upon becoming a TUR, making him a decent damage dealer. A few days later, Arale received the new Dokkan event in which physical Arale received the Dokkan Awakening. She did immense damage with a 30% chance to greatly raise attack even more, just like Buuhan. She also received 120% attack when performing a super attack, meaning she hit really hard. A week later, Baseball Yamcha made his debut as a free-to-play unit, and he was just as godly as the previous 2 Yamcha units. Another week later, Dokkan entered its Christmas campaign. They released a special banner where you were guaranteed one of the 3 new SSRs from the Goku Black arc on your first multi-summon. Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta and Super Saiyan Trunks were both very good support units that also raised all allies' attack by 20% with the super attack effect. Super Saiyan Blue Goku wasn't as impressive, but he could dish out some solid damage. The 16th World Tournament also dropped, and players were finally able to Dokkan Awaken Piccolo into an LR. He required special medals earned from playing World Tournament, so it took many players a few months to actually get LR Piccolo. Piccolo had an incredibly high defensive stat, on top of gaining 10,000 defense from his passive and giving all allies 5,000 defense. He instantly became one of the best tanks in the game, and many people paired him with Vegito Blue to increase his tanking capabilities. Piccolo's leader skill, despite not being very good, was the greatest single stat increase we had seen to date, HP up by 150%. We also got the first Christmas double rates banner, which gave 2 Santa Roshis per multi-summon, which were basically just Elder Kais. Majub and Super Saiyan GT Goku also received TURs, but they were horribly mid. The Christmas banner was clearly a bait banner, as Dokkan had been hinting at a new major release at the end of the month.
我こそが神我こそが正義さあ我が前にひれ伏せお前に俺たちの生きる思いを潰させるものか
Dokkanfest merged Zamasu and Dokkanfest Sword of Hope Trunks were released on the same banner. Trunks and Zamasu were sort of the demigod versions of Vegito and Rosé's God Leader skill. They give 70% HP, attack, and defense to Super Class and Extreme Class respectively, but only gave one key. As a result, many people would mix and match this leader skill with Rosé and Vegito's leader skill to get slightly higher stat increases in exchange for 2 less ki. This wasn't too big of a problem though, especially for super class teams, as it was filled with units that shared many key links together. INT Trunks was a self-sufficient nuker, gaining 15% attack per INT key sphere obtained, but he also created his own INT orbs. Merged Zamasu was a really hard hitter, gaining 120% attack at the start of turn. He also debuffed super class allies attack by 10%, but since he was mainly run on villain teams, that really wasn't an issue. Both units also had formidable super attacks, making them fantastic options for anyone who pulled them. At the same time, they also dropped the second Prime Battle event, which dropped the first form Frieza that could be Dokkan Awakened into an LR. This free-to-play LR had the single highest attack stat on release, and he gained 13,000 attack and 5,000 defense at the start of turn. He hit even harder than LR Goku and was the hardest hitting unit in the game outside of Super Vegito and Vegito Blue on a turn where they got 3 or more counters. For New Year's, they released an amazing banner that featured many of the best units in the game at the time, including Rosé, Super Vegito, Super Saiyan 3 Gotenks, and Blue Kaioken Goku. The final Dokkanfest of this meta released on January 13th, featuring the last demigod lead, INT Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta. He was a pretty straightforward damage dealer and stacked attack for 3 turns on Super. He also had the added ability of debuffing extreme class enemies' attack and defense by 20%, making him a really good unit against extreme class bosses. These 3 Super Saiyan Blue Vegetas also received Dokkan Awakenings, with STR Blue Vegeta and AGL Blue Vegeta being good options for their respective monotype teams. It had been over a year now since the start of the nuking meta, and over 6 months of us being in the God Lead meta, so physical Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta wasn't really relevant anymore even after becoming a TUR. And lastly, Dokkan released another double race banner on January 20th, which came with the Dokkan Awakening of AGL Kaioken Goku. Like many Dokkan Awakenings for old SSRs, he was alright. Around this time, we also got V-Jump leaks and a live stream that teased a new mode called Virtual Dokkan Battlefield for the upcoming 2nd anniversary, as well as a new LR Ginyu Force card. They also announced a new difficult event known as Boss Rush, and a red Dragon Stone that would allow players to recruit one of the 5-3 key attack up by 3,000 type leads for free. The 2nd anniversary was shaping up to be the biggest celebration yet, and we were about to enter a new era in Dokkan, where damage once again reigned supreme. Defense had just started to matter a bit more during the God Lead era, but the 2nd anniversary units were about to take the game by storm, and introduce a new level of power creep into the game.
今度の俺はちょっと強えぞ。
If you enjoyed what you saw, please like the video and subscribe to stay tuned for future parts, as well as leaving a comment down below on your thoughts on the God Lead meta. I know many long-time players started the game around this time, so I would love to see people reminisce and point out things that I missed in the comments below. I'll see you guys next time when we cover the Neo God Leads of Dokkan.